And we are live for Thursday night football, week 7. And man, do we have a banger of a game tonight. The Denver Broncos versus the New Orleans Saints. I'm pumped for this game. This is the Thursday night football games I remember from last season. This is exactly what I want from a Thursday night football game. Not really what we want from a fantasy football perspective. Really, not very many guys in this game you feel very comfortable starting. The Broncos are 2.5-point favorites in New Orleans tonight. We got all sorts of players that the general NFL fan base has never heard of. We're going to see Spencer Rattler get his second start tonight. Mason Tipton. We're going to see Marvin Mims, Lucas Kroll, Cedric Wilson, Devon Vele, Bub Means, Juwan Johnson. These are the featured players tonight. I imagine the start-sit decisions tonight going to be pretty straightforward. You pretty much have to start Alvin Kamara if you have Alvin Kamara. This is the worst projection that Alvin Kamara has had heading into a game all season. He's still a must-start top 12 running back, though. He still does not have a game under 12 points. He still now has 3 games in a row with at least 5 catches, ranked second in receptions per game, only behind the top 3 running back Kenneth Walker. Second in receiving yards per game, still has a massive role. Dealing with a couple different injuries. He's playing through injuries really all season. Alvin Kamara still kind of has to be started tonight. He's really the only must-start. The second closest must-start is the Denver Broncos defense. Yes, Rashid Shaheed, unfortunately, is droppable. Yep, he is looking likely done for the season, to miss the rest of the season. So, yeah, Shaheed is droppable. Very sad stuff there with Shaheed. Really was balling this season. He played in 5 games. He was over 16 points in 4 of those games. Shaheed's going to be a great sleeper pick next fantasy season when people forget about him. He's one of the better wide receiver 2s in the NFL. Another note on the Saints, no Chris Olave in this game. Part of the reason Bub Means is projecting as the Saints' top receiver in this game. We'll talk about him in a second. I see some start-sit questions already in the chat about Bub Means. I'm going to just talk through both teams real quick, what I think is going to happen in this game. Then, of course, we're going to grind through all the start-sit comments that have to do with Thursday night, like we do every single Thursday night. Shout out to everyone in the live, by the way. Hit that like button if you're watching live on YouTube. Smash the subscribe button if you're watching live on TikTok, guys. Hit the follow button. Brody, I see you in the TikTok live. As always, I'll get to the TikTok live subscriber comments, all of them by the end of the live. And if you follow on TikTok, I'm also more likely to see your comments. So make sure you hit that follow button over on the TikTok live. But yeah, Olave's out of this game with a concussion. He got hurt very early in the game last week. I think it was the first completion, I think, from Spencer Rattler went to Olave, and he actually fumbled on that play, got a concussion, had negative points last week, out this week. But I actually think Chris Olave is one of the most obvious buys in fantasy football right now. Trade for Chris Olave if you're looking good for the fantasy playoffs. There's no Rashid Shaheed now, rest of season. Olave is going to be locked into a significant target share, and he has one of the best fantasy football playoff schedules among all receivers. He gets the Commanders, Packers, Raiders in the fantasy football playoffs. He only has one more difficult matchup this whole season. So I'm buying Chris Olave, even though we're not going to see him tonight, especially on my teams where I'm looking likely to make the fantasy playoffs. I think Chris Olave could be a league winner this season. So yeah, Alvin Kamara needs to be started. Guys, I really don't want to start Bub Means. I really don't. He ranks outside the top 50 wide receivers in the WalterPicks app in the projections. By the way, if you haven't checked out the WalterPicks app yet, do not know what you are waiting for. Link is in the YouTube description. Link is in the TikTok bio. I'm seeing in the TikTok comments, Debo Samuel or Bub Means. I'm seeing in the YouTube comments, Bub Means, Juju or Tank Bigsby. Guys, play Debo Samuel over Bub Means. Play Tank Bigsby over Bub Means. I'd probably play Juju over Bub Means too. There's a little bit of a injury concern suddenly with Juju. Some popped up on the injury report, the hamstring. Seems not that serious, but it's tough to know at this point in the week. But yeah, Bigsby over Bub Means like very, very easily. Bub Means was the featured receiver last week. 71% snap share. He had 8 targets, 21% target share, and did decent. 5 catches, 45 yards, and a touchdown. Bub Means was not a very good player in college. He does have a strong athletic profile. He's got a 92nd percentile size-adjusted speed score. His yards per reception in college was also really good, 17.3 yards per reception, which I believe was actually 17.6 yards per reception. I think that might have led all receivers in this rookie class. So he has big playability. You could do worse in deep leagues than Bub Means, but I still don't really want to start him. I really don't. Even with Pat Surtain out, I do not think Bub Means is a safe play by any means. Bub Means by any means, not a safe play. All right. That's Bub Means, who's probably going to lead the Saints in receiving tonight. If it's not Bub Means leading the Saints in receiving tonight, honestly, Kamara is probably most likely to do so. Bub Means in terms of the wide receivers, though. Juwan Johnson also is an interesting dart throw at tight end this week in deeper leagues. There's some buys this week. He's got back-to-back games over 7 points. Notable for a tight end to get over 7 points without a touchdown. That's what we've seen from Juwan Johnson in back-to-back games. Juwan Johnson is playing the most he's played all season. He's going to be out there almost every single snap, and he's competing for targets next to Bub Means and Mason Tipton. I mean, really, after Alvin Kamara, it might be Juwan Johnson, really, that actually commands the next highest target share. He only had an 8% target share last week, but he caught all 3 of his targets for 48 yards, and this is actually a good matchup versus the Broncos. The Broncos have been very good against receivers. They play a lot of man coverage. Again, they're without their best player on their team today, without Pat Surtain, one of the best corners, if not the best corner in the NFL. But the rest of the secondary is still decent too, but they have actually struggled a bit against tight ends. They've allowed at least 4 receptions to a tight end every single game since week 2. It's been 4 straight games, 5 straight games, allowing at least 4 receptions to one tight end. And they've allowed at least 5 receptions actually to tight ends in total in most of those games. So yeah, I do think Juwan Johnson is an interesting tight end sleeper. We've got him ranked as tight end 14 in the WalterPicks app right now. There's some tight ends I'm absolutely going to be playing Juwan Johnson over, but still not a must start, obviously, by any means, by any Bub means. Mason Tipton, please, no Mason Tipton start to a question. We don't even have a picture here for Mason Tipton. He had 2.5 points last week. He is going to play. He played 40% of the snaps. He is not good, guys. This is a special team player. Cedric Wilson, also, please no start sit questions with Cedric Wilson tonight. Like, these guys, it's possible for them to make a big play tonight, but this is not a good matchup. Kendre Miller. We might see Kendre Miller for the first time this season. I am pretty skeptical about the workload for Kamara heading into this game. Short week. He's dealing with a couple different injuries. Now Kendre Miller's active for the first time. Maybe they ease his workload a little. Again, Kamara still kind of has to be started in fantasy, but I do think we could see a slightly lower workload for him. He's seen less than 14 rushing attempts in back-to-back games now, but the target share has still been strong. All right, that's the thoughts for the Saints. The Saints, by the way, coming off Spencer Rattler's first performance, very notable. So I was surprised how good he looked out of the gates. I was very skeptical about Spencer Rattler on the Sunday morning live. I was in on the Bucs. That was my favorite game to play against the Saints last week. Talked about it on the Sunday morning live extensively because I wasn't in on Spencer Rattler. He looked good in the first half. He was actually playing really well in the first half. Seemed like once the Buccaneers had just a little bit of tape on him after the first half, he got absolutely crushed in the second half. And it had a lot to do with if he was inside or outside of the pocket. They were scheming him a lot of outside the pocket passes, Spencer Rattler, in the first half with a lot of effectiveness. He was averaging 9.7 yards per attempt in his attempts outside the pocket last week. But when he was inside the pocket, he was awful. Through multiple interceptions, 4.5 yards per attempt. And in the second half, the Bucs were successfully keeping him inside the pocket. I think we see the Broncos do the same thing. I'm once again very skeptical about Spencer Rattler. The 243 yards, way more than I expected last week versus the Bucs. This is a harder matchup for Spencer Rattler on a short week. We got a Sean Payton revenge game narrative going on tonight too, and why not against a 5th-round rookie on a short week who just averaged 4.5 yards per attempt when passing inside the pocket. He also threw 2 interceptions against a Bucs secondary that has not been great this season. Now they get the Broncos secondary again without Pat Surtain. But yeah, Spencer Rattler's probably going to struggle tonight, especially if they keep him inside the pocket. I expect Spencer Rattler to struggle. A lot of dump offs to Kamara, Juwan Johnson, Bub Means. All right, on the Broncos side of the ball, I do expect the Broncos to win this game, and I think there is a decent chance we see the Broncos crush the Saints. Guys, we just saw the Saints, and I know the Bucs offense is playing well. The Saints just allowed 51 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm pretty sure that's the most points any team has scored this season. This Saints defense is struggling. It's possible we see some decent performance from the Broncos offense tonight against the Saints defense that just got obliterated. I know that There was a couple turnovers that led to that 51-point total. But this is a rough, short week after allowing 51 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know how you aren't in on the Broncos in this game. Again, looking at the Spencer Rattler stats, how bad he was inside the pocket, looking at how bad the defense played last week. I know Surtain is out. Bo Nix also struggled a bit last week. But if you squint, guys, I don't think this is getting enough attention. Sneakily, Bo Nix has been a top 12 fantasy football quarterback in 3 of his last 4 games. Yep, you heard that correct. That is correct. He's been a top 12 fantasy football quarterback in 3 of his last 4 games. This is what happens when you have rushing quarterbacks, because he scored a rushing touchdown in week 5. He had 61 rushing yards last week. Massive for fantasy. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns this season. He ranks top 10 in every rushing category. He's been a top 10 fantasy QB in back-to-back weeks, over 20 points in back-to-back weeks. And he hasn't even played that great from a real NFL perspective. He did throw an interception last week. That went off someone's hands, though. Really wasn't his fault on that one. Not the best matchup versus the Saints for what they've done this season. Again, they got obliterated last week by the Bucs, allowed 29 fantasy points to Baker Mayfield, but they had held up in pretty much every game up until then. So I'm not rushing to start Bo Nix, but I wouldn't be shocked to see the Broncos offense do a little bit better than what people expect in this game. Javonte Williams is still the clear lead back on this team. He did fumble last week, though, and I do think we could see more Audric Estime in this game. Audric Estime came back for the first time last week after the injury. He played 2 snaps, and he had 2 carries. And one of those carries was really successful, and they both came in the second half, which was a bit odd. For Estime, it was like very shortly after Javonte fumbled at the end of the first half last week. I won't be shocked to see Estime get some run in the first half and second half in this game on a short week, with Javonte Williams kind of struggling. Guys, Javonte Williams has not been over 5 yards per carry in a single game this season. He's coming off a 3.8 yards per carry game versus the Chargers. He had a couple good runs in that game, but again, he also fumbled and overall was pretty inefficient. The receiving role has actually been pretty good for Javonte, 12 targets in his last 2 games. So you got to think he stays pretty involved. He's actually coming off a season-high 67% snap share, despite that game last week being a bit of a blowout for the Broncos. They came back a little bit at the end, but they had 0 points in the fourth quarter in that game versus the Chargers. I think they scored 2 touchdowns in that fourth quarter. So interesting season-high snap percentage for him. Again, I won't be shocked to see Estime eat into that role. It feels like Jaleel McLaughlin is just toast. I won't be shocked if Estime is just ahead of him. McLaughlin has been relegated to just purely receiving back. Now, he only had 3 carries last week, did absolutely nothing with them, 2.7 yards per carry, which was down from 6 carries the week before. He might have fewer than 3 carries in this game, still played 25% of snaps, ran 7 routes, and had 2 targets. He's got 6 targets his last 2 games. They've been throwing to the running backs a lot. But yeah, I think Estime might just be ahead of Jaleel at this point. At the receiver positions, I'm expecting some Cortland Sutton start-sits tonight. He's definitely startable. He was on my do not draft list. I'm definitely feeling pretty good about that. I just don't think there's a real ceiling here with Sutton, but the target volume's there. I mean, he's clearly the best receiver on the team, which is the reason people wanted to draft him. He's over 18% target share in all but 1 game. The air yards on the team look pretty decent, but he still doesn't have a game with more than 15.5 points. He still doesn't really have a true ceiling. He did have a big catch last week called back by a holding penalty on the offensive line. So that got masked a little bit. He almost had over 20 points last week versus the Chargers. So he definitely is startable in this game tonight. He's the second best fantasy option. Him and Javonte, the next best fantasy options in this game after Alvin Kamara and the Broncos defense tonight. Everyone else on this team, you really can't start. Like, I don't want to see Devon Vele questions. Could Devon Vele have a game tonight? Sure. He had 4 for 78 last week, had a season high 62% snap percentage, 19% target share. We've only seen Devon Vele play in 2 games this season. He had over an 18% target share in both games. Devon Vele, for those of you guys that haven't been following closely with the Broncos offense, which I do not blame you for, he's a 7th-round rookie. So we got a 7th-round rookie in Devon Vele. We have Bub Means, who is a 5th-round rookie draft pick. And then we also have Mason Tipton tonight. Mason Tipton, who was an undrafted rookie. Troy Franklin, by the way, he had his first touchdown last week. He was a 4th-round pick. A lot of people thought he was going to go in the 2nd round. He's playing behind Devon Vele. Different receivers. But, man, and Vele's not a rookie anymore, by the way. That's just when he was drafted. He was a 7th-round pick. Actually, he is a rookie. He's a 27-year-old rookie. I don't even know how that's possible. I mean, he must have played 8 years in college. I mean, crazy stuff. But, yeah, Vele is going to get some run tonight. He's going to play over half the snaps. Troy Franklin also is coming off a season-high snap percentage. I hope he gets more involved. He played in college with Bo Nix. A lot of people thought he was going to be a second-round draft pick. He has really good speed, and it's exciting to see him get his season-high snap percentage last week. Hopefully that carries over to this week. Obviously well off the fantasy radar, but would be exciting to see him get some run. I don't think his over 23 yards tonight is that bad of a play. He could definitely do that in a single play. That's not my free player prop of the night, though. I do have one for us, Sean. Juwan or Schultz. Yeah, so let me just talk through some of the tougher start sits tonight really quick before I get to the free player prop of the game. Like I said, I expect the Broncos to win, and there's really, really not too many guys who need to be sweating in terms of start sits. I'm playing Schultz easily over both tight ends in this game. Juwan Johnson, Lucas Kroll is probably going to lead the Broncos in snaps. I'm going to be playing. I'd rather play. Let me pull this up here. We got Juwan Johnson, Juwan Johnson versus Grant Calcaterra. I think that's pretty close because I don't think Godwin's going to play this week. We got Juwan Johnson ahead of Mark Andrews. That's a pretty tough start sit to make, though. Honestly, I don't think I'd have the guts to play Johnson over Andrews. It's close. This is a good matchup for Johnson. I actually think he's a decent floor in this game. Cade Otton, I'd play over Juwan Johnson. Kyle Pitts, I'd play over Juwan Johnson. Isaiah Likely, I'd play over Juwan Johnson. Tucker Kraft, Dalton Kincaid, I'd play over Juwan Johnson. And Njoku, Schultz, Ingram, Laporta, McBride, Kittle, Bowers, Kelsey. Some of those are, obviously really obvious. Juwan Johnson versus Andrews, pretty close. Juwan Johnson versus Zach Ertz, I'm going Juwan. Juwan Johnson versus Freiermuth, I'm going Juwan. Juwan Johnson versus Hunter Henry, I'm going Juwan Johnson there too. Grant Calcaterra, I actually think is an interesting sleeper this week. He looked great last week. He's actually really fast. But I do think Juwan Johnson's a start over him as well. First time catching the stream. So hi, what's going on, everyone? Appreciate you guys tuning in. We got a banger of a Thursday night football game tonight. Make sure you hit that like button on the YouTube live. We're about to get through tons of start sit questions. But yeah, Juwan Johnson's not a must start. He's a decent dart throw at tight end if you're really struggling and you're looking at Zach Ertz or Pat Freiermuth or Hunter Henry or Calcaterra, guys. Colby Parkinson too. I think I did see that one earlier in the live. I would start Juwan Johnson over Colby Parkinson. I got a free player prop for us that you won't find in the WalterPicks app. If you are into player props, you got to download the WalterPicks app, by the way. Do not know what you're waiting for. You got to do one of the subscriptions in the app. Well worth the price if you are into player props. But I want to run through some of the Saints players here. Some of the Broncos here. So Javonte Williams, let's look at the running backs. And the running backs that I played Javonte Williams over. Javonte Williams, he's had 12 targets in his last 2 games. I don't know if I'd play him over Josh Jacobs. I don't think I'm there. We got them back to back here. I think it's close. I think I'd lean Jacobs there, though. Chase Brown, that's close too. I think I'd lean Javonte over Chase Brown. Montgomery's in a tough matchup this week. I don't know if I have the guts to start him over Montgomery, even if he projects a bit better. Javonte Williams has not scored a touchdown yet this season. This is one of the better matchups he's had of late. But man, he struggled big time last week. He's only had 1 game over 12 points. He had, again, a season-high snap percentage last week, though, and I do think there's a chance the Broncos offense really crushes. And you look at what happened to the Saints defense on the ground last week, and you start to understand why Javonte's projecting ahead of some of these guys. Guys, Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker last week. This is part of the reason I don't know how you take the Saints in this game. I will talk about Bud Means again here in a second. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers guys, these 2 running backs, Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, who, they played great. They combined for over 250 yards against this Saints defense just a few days ago. Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. So you got to feel decent about Javonte Williams looking at that, especially when you consider he's had 12 targets in his last 2 games, and they're sending a significant target share to the running back. So you could do much worse than Javonte this week. Him versus Eckler, I think, is super close. It seems like B-Rob's going to play, but great matchup for Eckler. He's had at least 10 in every game. Again, I don't think I'd have the guts to go Javonte over Jacobs, but it's certainly close, and that's what we're projecting in the WalterPicks app. Javonte over Chase Brown, I'm down to do that. Javonte over James Conner, tough call to make there, but Conner's also struggled a bit, and he's playing the Chargers this week, who have been really good versus running backs. That's who Javonte played last week, who he struggled against last week. Tyrone Tracy, it seems like Singletary might be out, but tough matchup versus the Eagles. I'd go Javonte there. Najee Harris, I'm going Javonte there. Zach Moss, Javonte, everyone below here, definitely Javonte. Tank Bigsby, Dearness Johnson, I'm playing Javonte. So Javonte's a start in a lot of spots, but I'm playing Brian Robinson, Jordan Mason, Achane, Antonio Gibson, I think, is probably a start over him as well. All right, what's the word here on Bub Means? Yeah, so Bub Means, not a start tonight by any means. Bub Means not a start by any means. Bub Means ranks as outside the top 50 receivers. He is going to play a lot. He played a season high, career high, 71% of snaps. Bub Means, actually, I'm pretty sure he was either first or second in this draft class in yards per reception in college, 17.6 yards per reception. He also profiles as a very good size adjusted athlete, 92nd percentile speed score. So this is a fast, deep threat wide receiver who can make big plays, but he wasn't very good in college. He was a 5th round pick. He was not the best receiver on his own college team. He is a 5th round pick for a reason. So he's by no means a safe play, but he can make big plays. And the Broncos are without Surtain tonight, but the secondary is still decent without Surtain. So yes, the Broncos, I think, are clearly the better team in this game. They're only favored by 2.5. I think they probably should be favored by more than that. Wandale's floor or Javante's ceiling tonight? Yeah, so Wandale gets the Eagles. I'm a known Wandale hater. This is a pretty good one. Pretty good start today. I expect some good start today questions here with Javante. Yeah, you got to go Javante here. With the ceiling, with just how the Bucs running backs did last week, you got to roll with Javante. You got to roll with Javante. Again, they combined for over 250 yards against this Saints defense last week. Bub Means or Pickens? Yeah, we're starting Pickens. Guys, don't start Bub Means. Bub or Chubb? Oh, man, I don't know if Nick Chubb's even playing this week. It seems like he might. I think that's a really tough one, man. I think I'd probably go Nick Chubb, assuming he plays. And I think if he doesn't play, you probably can still find something comparable to Bub Means on the waiver wire. Denver or Cincy defense. Yeah, so both these defenses are good. We got Broncos as the number 4 defense this week in the WalterPicks app. I like them a lot this week. The Bengals, though, I think are an even better option. The Browns have the worst offensive line in the NFL. They just lost their best receiver. Deshaun's looked awful. Nick Chubb might be back this week. It's not like the Bengals defense has been good, but I'm a purely matchup-based defense guy when it comes to fantasy. So yeah, I'm down to start the Bengals. I'm starting the Bengals and the Bills over the Broncos. I honestly think I'd start the Broncos over the Jags, though. The Jags defense has been tough. I know the Pats offense has struggled, but I also have no faith in Spencer Rattler tonight. Again, in the pocket last week, Spencer Rattler was an abysmal 4.5 yards per attempt through multiple interceptions. Outside the pocket, he was actually really effective, and they were doing a good job getting him outside the pocket in the first half. He completed like 11 of his first 13 pass attempts or something crazy like that. He was under a 50% completion percentage in the second half, though. It seemed like once the Bucs got adjusted to what they were seeing from Rattler, he just got crushed. And now they have a full game of tape on Rattler on a short week. This does not feel like a good spot for Spencer Rattler, even playing at home. Sutton or Ayuk? Yeah, I'm going Ayuk there. I'm going Ayuk easily. I'm playing Kincaid over Juwan Johnson easily. I'm benching most players in this game in most spots. The only guy you can't bench is Alvin Kamara. And then Javante is a start in a lot of spots. I'll probably tell a lot of people to start Javante tonight. Like I just said, Javante over Wan'Dale Robinson. I think Javante over a guy like Austin Eckler makes sense. Javante over Najee Harris, like start sits like that, I think makes sense for Javante. Bo Nix, he has that over back-to-back. He has back-to-back games over 20 points. Still don't think he's like a must start or anything, or even a safe start tonight. But I think he's been underratedly good for fantasy. For Pittman or Sutton this week, it's so tough to be starting Pittman right now. We got Anthony Richardson coming back, a tough matchup versus the Dolphins, who've ranked 4th best versus receivers this season. I think it's got to be Sutton here. Wow, both projected 10 points in the WalterPicks app. Look how similar these options are, but better matchup for Sutton. I think just a safer play with Sutton. I would go Sutton over Pittman. And again, Sutton had a big catch, like a 35-yard catch called back by a holding penalty last week. He almost went over 20 fantasy points for the first time last week. Hey, Sam, what props do you like tonight? Yeah, so we got the free player props, guys. We went 2 for 2 after the London time game where Bigsby fell short for us in the London time game. We went 2 for 2. CeeDee Lamb and Bo Nix hit for us last week, over 18.5 completions. He finished with 19, and man, was that close. I do not know how he ended up hitting that one. Bo Nix, really, we got lucky there. We'll take it, of course. But over 18.5 completions. He finished with 19 completions. Just at the end of the game, he had a completion to get in field goal range, and then they didn't get the ball again. I think he only had 1 completion in the first quarter last week. I mean, it was rough start for them versus the Chargers defense. But yeah, there's multiple props I'd like tonight. And I got a dart throw for us again. I had Tyler Lockett last Thursday night to score his first touchdown of the season. Got another guy to score his first touchdown of the season tonight. So let me talk through the free player props quick. I'll switch to, let's talk through Juwan Johnson here first. I got a screenshot of the game logs here for the TikTok live. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, you are seeing, I'll pull this up on YouTube too, the Juwan Johnson game logs. This is what you get in the WalterPicks app for free. You can see advanced game logs like this in the WalterPicks app. I've helped build this app over the last 4 years. Best way you can support me is downloading the app. It's in the TikTok bio if you want advanced stats like this on every single player for free. There's some premium subscriptions in the app too. They're well worth it. But these types of game logs and insights, they're completely free. You look at the matchups against the Broncos. They've been really good against receivers. And again, I know Surtain's out tonight, but they have not been great against tight ends. They've allowed at least 5 total receptions to tight ends in 5 straight games. And then you look at the situation for Juwan Johnson. He's back-to-back weeks with season-high snap percentage, over 75% snaps for the first time each of the last 2 games. And he's competing with Bub Means and Mason Tipton with no Shaheed, no Olave tonight, locked in for at least a few targets in this game. His line's at 2.5. The odds on this have gotten a little bit worse since I initially liked it. So that's why I have a couple plays, but I think this is a really safe play. Juwan Johnson over 2.5 receptions. That's the first free player prop. The second one is the rookie, Audric Estime tonight. I don't think he's a start for fantasy, but Audric Estime, I do think is a good sleeper in this game. He only played 2 snaps last week. He only played 2 snaps. Reminds me, honestly, like a little bit, not fully, because obviously James Cook didn't end up playing, but a little bit like the Ray Davis situation on last Monday night. Ray Davis, weirdly only played a couple of snaps, had no carries the week prior, and then he was clearly ahead of Ty Johnson on Monday night when James Cook was out. I think Estime is just going to be ahead of McLaughlin. Much different running backs, but McLaughlin's pretty much fully phased out of the run game now. I think they start to phase Estime in a little bit more. He's only been in 2 games. He got hurt in week 1, and we just saw him back for the first time in week 6. He didn't play till the second half after Javonte Williams fumbled. He did have 1 really successful carry, though. He's over 6.5 yards per carry on his very limited carries. Obviously, super small sample size here. He's 4 carries this season. But I think we see him get at least a few carries tonight. And I think there's an upside for 10-plus carries if he plays well. And again, look at what happened to the Saints defense last week and tell me Estime can't hit this in a single play. Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker combined for 250 total yards. I expect the Saints offense to really struggle with Spencer Rattler, which could be also a very good run game environment for the Broncos. So yeah, I'm taking Audric Estime over 16.5 rush yards. And I also like Estime to score his first career touchdown tonight versus the Saints. That's at like plus 550, I think, in a lot of places. So those are the 3 free player props for you tonight. The 2 official ones, Estime over 16.5 rush yards, Juwan Johnson over 2.5 receptions, and then the bonus, Estime to score a touchdown. Those are the free player props tonight. I'm riding with all of those. Hey, Sam, do I trade away Kenneth Walker, Jacobs, and Devonta Smith for Gibbs and Godwin? Nope. Definitely don't do this. Absolutely not. We're not trading away Kenneth Walker. There's very, very few players I want more than Kenneth Walker in fantasy right now. He is a top 5 rest of season running back. Gibbs is not in the same tier as Kenneth Walker. He's got a pretty good fantasy playoff schedule, kind of a scary matchup there versus the Vikings. But guys, Kenneth Walker has more catches per game. He's played in less games, but more catches per game than Alvin Kamara, who we're going to see get another 5 catches probably tonight. Hunt or Najee? Yeah, this one's close. Sunday morning question here, but I think I lean towards Hunt. It's definitely a close call there, though. Should I start Bub over Lockett? Nope, not doing that. I'm not starting Bub Means over Lockett. Mooney or Sutton in my flex slot. Yeah, so Sutton and Javonte, I think these are the guys to be really like thinking about the most with start-sit decisions. Like in general, don't start Bub Means. Don't start Devon Bailey. Juwan Johnson, again, I like his prop over 2.5 receptions, but he could get 3 receptions and have a horrible fantasy game still. Same thing with Estime, of course. I like his over 16.5 rushing yards. That does not mean he's a good fantasy option. Let's do Bub Means versus Lockett here. And again, just the quick TLDR on Bub Means. If you've never heard of Bub Means, you know nothing about Bub Means. He's a rookie, a 5th round rookie draft pick. He was picked at the very end of the 5th round. He was the 35th pick of the 5th round, like a compensatory 5th round pick, basically a 6th round pick. He comes out of Pittsburgh, where I think he was number 1 in this draft class in yards per reception, 17.6 yards per reception in college, 92nd percentile size adjusted speed score, had a 4.43 40-yard dash, which ranks in the 87th percentile. He's fast. He's a deep threat, fast deep threat who had a lot of yards per reception in college, but he was not that productive in college. He was not the most productive receiver on his own team in college, not playing alongside the best receivers. So Bub Means is not a safe option. He still projects for almost 10 points, but yeah, you got to go Lockett in a potential high-scoring game versus the Falcons. This is projected to be the lowest scoring game of the week, guys, by far. A 37-point over under. Every other game's over 40 other than the Jets-Steelers game, which is still projected to be like much higher scoring than this game. The Tennessee Bills game projected to be much higher scoring than this game. So yeah, I'm out on Bub Means. I'm definitely in on Lockett over him. I'm prioritizing the Thursday night starts. So we got a Mooney versus Sutton question. Let me get to that one next. That's definitely a good one. Bigsby or Madison? Yeah, I lean towards Bigsby there for sure. I still think Bigsby's got a good ceiling. We saw Bigsby be the running back one where he scored 2 touchdowns. Definitely could do that against the Pats. All right, let's do Darnell Mooney versus Cortland Sutton. Again, prioritizing the Thursday night starts hits. Just to give you the rapid fire, what I expect tonight. I expect kind of an ugly game. I think there's a good chance the Broncos crush the Saints. I think Javonte Williams is a good start, not a great start. I think Kamara is the only must start tonight other than the Broncos defense. I expect Spencer Rattler to really struggle. I really don't want to start Bub Means. I really don't want to even see Mason Tipton or Devon Vele questions, but Vele, Bub Means, probably one of those two guys will do something tonight. They're both going to be out there over half the snaps for sure. Vele's only had 2 games. He's been over 18% target share in both those games. He's a 27-year-old, almost a 27-year-old rookie. I don't understand how that's possible. I got to look more into how he became a rookie at such an old age. But Darnell Mooney versus Sutton, yeah, it's Mooney. It's Mooney over Sutton. Like pretty easily, Mooney over Sutton. Means or Andrews, tight end premium. Oh gosh, yeah, tight end premium. I think you got to go Andrews. Definitely a tough call there though. Oh, I put Bo Nix in 2 lists. That's my bad. I actually moved it. Look, I had a previous version of this where I had Bo Nix in the must bench category initially. And then I looked more into it, and I actually don't think Nix is a must bench. I don't think Bo Nix is in must bench territory. Obviously, in most leagues, you're not considering Bo Nix unless it's a super flex league, most likely. But Bo Nix has sneakily actually been a top 12 quarterback in 3 of his last 4 games, and it's because of the rushing. One of those games, he had a rushing touchdown, and actually 2 of those games, he had rushing touchdowns. And then last week, he had a career high 61 rushing yards. A couple of really good, actually, scrambles by Bo Nix. It's not mostly designed runs. It's mostly scrambles, running for his life type runs for Bo Nix. But that does actually give him, some type of floor and ceiling, really more of a floor for fantasy. He's been over 21 points in back-to-back games, top 10 quarterback back-to-back weeks. So that's why I tried to move Nix up to the maybe worth it category. I forgot to remove him from the must bench category though. But I do think Nix is maybe worth it tonight against the Saints with the matchup that they just came off of. The Saints have been good versus quarterbacks in every game but last week. And they played some pretty good quarterbacks too. Like Jalen Hurts only had 12 points. Kirk only had 8.5 points. Mahomes only had 14 points. Baker Mayfield last week, though, had 30 points. It was QB2, had 325 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. Hey, Sam, should I start Javonte today or wait for Mason or Harris? Yeah, so Mason versus Javonte is a tough call, a tough Thursday night call because any other week of the season, I mean, this is easy, right? Easy. You're not benching Jordan Mason. And Jordan Mason's getting in limited practices too. So this isn't one of those situations like typically on Thursday nights, and this has not been 100% correct all the time. I think I was wrong about a couple of these. Last week, it ended up being fine. Like I didn't think Pittman was going to play last week. On Thursday night, he ended up playing, was kind of a decent guy to bench still. But Jordan Mason, like if you haven't practiced yet and it's Thursday, I kind of for Thursday start sits, I typically just assume you're not playing this week for my Thursday start sits. But if you are getting in limited practices already, like there's a real chance Mason plays this week. I mean, definitely a chance they sit him, though. This is already a close projection. I think you got to go Javonte. It's also a really tough matchup versus the Chiefs for Jordan Mason, which makes it a little bit of an easier decision. No running backs have had big games versus the Chiefs. I mean, they played good running backs, too. Kamara only had 12.5. Brian Robinson barely cracked 13 points. Derrick Henry had his worst game of the season. Dobbins had one of his worst games of the season. I think bench Jordan Mason for Javonte. I think that makes a ton of sense with the given matchups. Again, like the reason to be in on Javonte tonight too, and the reason he's a good start, he's not a great start. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet this season, which probably changes tonight also. You just look at how the running backs did last week, and you just go with that. I mean, again, over 250 yards and 3 total touchdowns to Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. That's part of the reason I'm in on the Estime props tonight. Over 16.5 rush yards for Estime. He only had 2 carries last week. That might be all he needs to get over 16.5 rush yards and score a touchdown in this game. Again, if it's a blowout, we could see a Sean Tucker-like performance from Audric Estime. Not as good of a receiver, I don't think, as Sean Tucker, but Estime definitely could get some work on the ground. Hey, love what you're doing. Thanks, man. Vele legacy game. Yeah, are we going to see a Devon Vele or Bub Means legacy game tonight? Probably not, but wouldn't be shocked to see one of those guys do pretty well. Again, I don't think we see a Spencer Rattler legacy game tonight either. I think we see Rattler struggle like he did in the second half last week. Again, he was really good actually in the first half. Really good. He completed like 11 of his first 13 passes. He brought the Saints back after being down 14 or 21-0 in that game. But then in the second half, he really struggled. And it seemed like once the Bucs figured him out a little bit, he had no hope. He ended still with more yards and more production than I expected, 243 and a touchdown for Rattler, plus 27 rushing yards, which was like he was not a very frequent rusher in college. 27 rushing yards was also pretty surprising. But he did throw 2 picks, and he did throw under 50% completion percentage in the second half. And it was really night and day whether he was inside the pocket or outside the pocket. And in the beginning of the game, they were really effectively getting Spencer Rattler outside the pocket. He was averaging 9.7 yards per attempt outside the pocket. That is very good. Inside the pocket, though, which was most of where he was in the second half, 4.5 yards per attempt. Small sample size here in one game, but I think this is pretty telling. And I think the Broncos are going to have this figured out heading into this game. A short week for the 5th-round rookie coming off a really bad last half. I'm not feeling good about Rattler tonight at all. Just did JT for Brian Robinson and Downs. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Seems like the Jonathan Taylor injury is like relatively significant, and he's not going to play this week. He might not play next week. He's also got an underratedly difficult playoff schedule. Brian Robinson's been great. I think his playoff schedule also, not that great for Brian Robinson. Downs has been good, but Downs has been good with Joe Flacco. He really hasn't been great yet with Anthony Richardson. Broncos defense made the Chargers look good. Why start them? Yeah, because they're not playing against Justin Herbert. They're playing against Spencer Rattler, who again really struggled in the second half last week, threw 2 picks, 4.7 yards per attempt. I get that they're without Surtain. This game also is the lowest over-under projection of the week, which is great for defenses. The Broncos are favored on the road in this game. I think the Broncos have a chance to just crush them in this game. It's honestly more about the Saints offense than it is the Broncos defense. I get that the Chargers offense did okay last week. I wouldn't say that they made the Chargers offense look great. They started great. Joe Flacco still, I'm sorry, not Joe Flacco. Justin Herbert still only had 237 yards and a touchdown, 61% completion percentage, 7 yards per attempt. I mean, it was really just kind of an average day for Herbert. I think Dobbins ended up having a decent game and scored a touchdown. And the Broncos have been a little bit more susceptible against the run. Yeah, Dobbins did have a good game, 96 yards and a touchdown against the Broncos last week. I don't think we see Kamara do quite as well. Again, the Saints offensive line's also in shambles. So they got a 5th-round rookie behind an offensive line in shambles, and we got Bub Means as his top receiver. I mean, this is not the same thing as the Chargers offense, especially on a short week. So that's the whole reason to start the Broncos defense. The only defenses I feel much better about than the Broncos are the Bills and the Bengals. Again, those are also matchup related. Olave stash? Yes, stash Chris Olave. I think Chris Olave is one of the most obvious trade fours in fantasy football right now. Shaheed is out for the season, which sucks. He was balling. Shaheed had gone over 18 points in 4 of his 5 games. Like really, I think established himself as one of the better wide receiver 2s in the NFL. But you look ahead at Olave's rest of season schedule. He's got one of the best schedules rest of season in the entire NFL for receivers. And he's got one of the best fantasy football playoff schedules too. So yeah, I'm definitely buying Chris Olave. I got Jonathan Taylor because I have Jaden and Terry Young. And I think if you got JT, I think that's a good trade. I didn't realize you got that side of the trade. Javonte or Kareem Hunt for a flex half PPR. Yeah, half PPR makes this one definitely pretty interesting. Let's compare these guys here in the WalterPicks app. Javonte is looking a little bit better in PPR. Half PPR, I bet it's even closer though, because Javonte definitely gets more catches than Hunt. And yeah, wow, Hunt gets a slight edge here in half PPR. I think this one's really close. I think it's definitely a better matchup for Javonte tonight, despite the 49ers averaging a little more points against to running backs. 49ers did allow a lot of points, but that was because Kenneth had 8 catches last week. I mean, we saw one big game versus the 49ers for 30 points. Hunt had, I think, 27 carries. Was it 27 carries? Am I remember? Yeah, 27 carries last week, or in his last game before the bye, which is insane. And then Javonte Williams, though, he's had 12 targets the last 2 games. He gets a matchup against this Saints defense that's coming off a game where they allowed 250 total yards and 3 TDs to the Bucs backup running backs in Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, who they're in a 3-headed backfield now, by the way. That's not great for fantasy. I would definitely not do this trade. Definitely not. So yeah, I think this is a really tough start sit. Honestly, think I lean Javonte Williams over Kareem Hunt. T. Higgins for Chase Brown. If you're getting T. Higgins, yes, I like that trade. Start Sutton, yeah, he's an okay start. I really think it goes. Kamara's the only must start. Broncos defense is borderline must start, depending on if the Bengals or Bills are available. Javonte is a good start. Sutton is an okay start. Bub Means is a desperation start. Bailey is a desperation start. Juwan Johnson is a very deep start if you're really struggling at tight end. Saints defense is an okay start if that's the best defense available, which probably aren't. Javonte or Myers. I don't know if Jacoby Myers is going to play. Again, this is one of those spots where he hasn't practiced yet this week. So no, you can't side with Jacoby. And also in half PPR, I almost always lean the running backs over the receivers in close decisions like that, because half PPR and non-PPR just skews more to the running backs and the touchdowns. Javonte, Wandale, and Jacobs pick 2 PPR. So yeah, I've already established I'm going Javonte over Wandale this week. So this really comes down to Wandale versus Jacobs, which is a Sunday morning question, but we'll pull it up real quick. I think I'd probably go Jacobs over Wandale. Yeah, I'm looking at a half PPR here, which definitely changes big time for Wandale. This might lean Wandale now. No, it's still Jacobs. I'm going Jacobs and Javonte over Wandale Robinson. Trade Kyren for CD and Reed. Yeah, if you have really good running backs, Kyren Williams is arguably in the best running back role in the entire NFL. He ranks as running back 1 this week in a good matchup versus the Raiders. Montgomery or Jordan Mason. Yeah, it's a tough call. Sunday morning question here, but if Mason's playing, I think this one's Mason. Devontae Adams or Sutton. Matt, here we are asking the right questions here on the Thursday live. Guys, it's week 7, and we got a banger of a football game coming on in just a few hours on the TV screens. Broncos at New Orleans Saints, 2.5-point favorites, lowest over under the week. And you kind of have to go Adams here, I think. I don't know what the projections here are going to say. Obviously, there's a ton of variance in what could happen with Devontae Adams. Suddenly, his hamstring is fine. That was one of my bigger questions from the start of this whole Devontae Adams saga was he actually injured? Because it was not clear from the beginning. It's honestly still not clear if he ever was injured or not. Clearly, he's fine now. He's going to play, and he's got to be started, I think, over Sutton. I mean, he's going to get a couple end zone targets in this game. He has a better chance to score a touchdown. Again, Sutton's an okay start, not a good start, not a great start. It's not like you need to force Sutton in your lineup tonight. We have not seen a big game from Sutton yet this season. Again, he really should have had close to 20 points last week because he had a big catch called back from a holding penalty on the offensive line. He did score a second touchdown of the season last week. But guys, even when Sutton's scoring touchdowns, he's barely getting to 15 points. This was the whole reason he was on the do not draft list. Last season, we saw the ceiling for Sutton. He had a career high 10 touchdowns, didn't even average more than 15 points per game. There's just not a real ceiling for Sutton. So yeah, I'm fine going Adams over Sutton this week and almost every week, probably looking forward. Why start Alvin Kamara? Because Kamara's in arguably the second best role, maybe only after Kyren Williams or maybe only after Kenneth Walker. Kamara, had a couple down games in a row. He's dealing with a couple different injuries. I wouldn't be shocked to see similar usage to what we've seen the last couple of games where the carries aren't very high, less than 15 carries back-to-back games, but he has 16 targets in his last 2 games. He leads all running backs again in target share. Alvin Kamara has ranked top 3 in running back target share, guys. I think this is the 8th consecutive season. The 8th consecutive season that we've seen Alvin Kamara rank over in the top 3 of running back target share. That's why he's a must start. Definitely a PPR for sure, despite the difficult matchup. I'm starting Javonte over Means easily. Why not start Nix? Yeah, so I actually moved Nix from the must bench to the maybe worth it category. Nix has actually been over 21 fantasy points in back-to-back games, largely because of the rushing. If you're watching live on TikTok, by the way, guys, come to the YouTube live. If the link is right in the TikTok bio. In the YouTube live, I can share my screen to the game logs of the players that we're talking about. So we're looking at Bo Nix's game logs right now on the YouTube live in the WalterPicks app, which is also free. Got to check out the WalterPicks app if you haven't yet. But Bo Nix, he had back-to-back games with 2 passing touchdowns. He's also had a rushing touchdown in 2 of his last 4 games. He had a career-high 61 rushing yards last week. So he's in the maybe worth it category, not the must-bench category. Definitely not the must-start category, though, either in the lowest over-under game. What about Sutton? He's an okay start, not a good start. Javonte or Chase Brown, please? Yes, Javonte. It's Javonte over Chase Brown. Am I starting Juwan Johnson over Kraft? Nope, we're going Kraft over Juwan Johnson for sure. What receiver you should trade for that isn't super expensive? I mean, is Olave super expensive right now? Because he might not be. And I think he's one of the most obvious buys in fantasy football right now. I also think Devontae Smith, I don't think his price is as high as it probably should be. Devontae Smith also has a really good rest of season schedule. He's probably a little bit pricier than Chris Olave, but man, he's got a great schedule down the stretch. Bub or Gibson? Yeah, I'm going Antonio Gibson there. I'm going Antonio Gibson versus the Jags. Doesn't seem like Mondre is going to play this week. Saints defense to start. They're an okay start, not a must start. Okay start, not a must start. This game is a low over under, so like I'm fine starting them, but I would prefer the Broncos defense for sure. If you guys are just joining the YouTube live, guys, hit the like button, smash the subscribe button. No need to spam in the YouTube live. Juju 1, Waddle, Douglas start 2, Bucky White, Sermon start 1. Yeah, I'm starting Bucky over White probably. I want nothing to do with Sermon. He's injured too. It seems like JT might miss again, but I still not sure I'd start Sermon there. And we got to wait to see about Juju, but I'd probably bench Waddle there. I mean, tough call there too. I think I'd probably bench Waddle, but that's a close one. Also, all those are Sunday morning questions, so I could change my mind on Sunday morning. Make sure you guys tune into the Sunday morning lives as well. That's why you got to hit the follow button on TikTok, hit the subscribe button. Should I start Audric Estime? So no. Here's what you do. You don't start Estime, but I am riding Estime's props tonight. I'm playing Juwan Johnson over Zach Ertz. That is one of the tight ends I'd play Juwan Johnson over. I got 3 free player props for us tonight. One of them is Audric Estime's over rushing yards. It's at 16.5. 16.5 rushing yards. I think he can get this in a single carry. I think he can get this in just a couple of carries. He only had 2 carries last week, but it was his first game back from injury. He didn't get a carry till the second half. There's a real risk we see something similar tonight, but I'm willing to bank on the talent profile for Estime. I liked a lot. My comp for Estime coming out of college was Jordan Howard. And that's kind of what he's looked like so far in the NFL on his 4. He only has 4 carries. He's averaging 6.8 yards per carry on that very small sample size. Now, obviously, he's not going to be at 6.8 yards per carry in a larger sample size, but he doesn't need to be to get over 16.5 rushing yards. And again, we just saw the Saints defense allow over 250 total yards and 3 touchdowns to the Buccaneers running back, Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving last week. I like Estime to score his first touchdown tonight also. I still don't think he's a start in fantasy though. Like I like the odds on the props, but he's definitely not a start in fantasy. You gotta just hold Estime in fantasy, not start him for sure. And then I like Juwan Johnson over 2.5 receptions tonight too. We've seen at least 5 catches of tight ends against the Broncos in 5 straight games. And Juwan Johnson's competing against some of the lesser known receivers in the NFL tonight. Bub Means, Mason Tipton, Sutton or Douglas. That one's a pretty close actually. I think it's probably Douglas. Yeah, Damari Douglas for sure. Douglas has a great matchup versus the Jags. Do you trade Nick Chubb and Amari for Tyreek? Yep, doing that. 100% doing that. Need space. Drop Mark Andrews or Damari? Yeah, drop Andrews. Just drop Andrews. You don't need 2 tight ends. If Andrews is your second tight end, you have another decent tight end, just cut bait, drop Andrews. Let someone else deal with it. Someone else will probably add him. Let them deal with it. He's done better recently, but he's still really not a safe start. Hey, Sam, I need 2 wide receivers, no flex. I don't think there's any Thursday players on here. I like Diggs and Tank. I think you go these first 3 guys, Diggs, Tank, and Douglas. We'll see if Brian Robinson plays, but it seems like he's gonna. Sutton or Downs, Javonte or Brian Thomas Jr. Let's get to both these. Sutton versus Downs, that's got to be a close one. And my gut says it's Downs, but with Anthony Richardson back, it's really tough to trust Josh Downs, and a kind of a tough matchup versus the Dolphins. Yep, it's Downs. It's still Downs. Downs has still had over 25% target share every game, basically. Yeah, he's over 25% target share every single game this season. I'd go Downs over Sutton. It's definitely a close one with A-Rich back. And then this other question in the YouTube live here. We're live on TikTok and YouTube right now, by the way, guys. If you're watching live on YouTube, hit the like button. I appreciate it, guys. Helps me out way more than you could possibly realize on the TikTok live, guys. Smash the follow button. Also, if you want a better live streaming viewing experience, come to the YouTube live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. I can share a screen on the YouTube live. I can pull up comments on the YouTube live. I do appreciate everyone watching from whatever platform you're watching on. All right, let's go to Javonte versus Brian Thomas Jr. here. Definitely an interesting one. Probably is Brian Thomas. Yeah, it's Brian Thomas. Oh, man, both projected 12.9. I don't know if I've seen 2 closer curves this whole season. Brian Thomas Jr., I mean, both these guys, you can tell a story about the ceiling. We've already talked about it, plenty this live stream. You look at what just happened versus the Saints on the ground with the running backs. Over 250 total yards and 3 touchdowns. After they just allowed 100 yards and a touchdown to Kareem Hunt the week before that. It's a close call. I mean, I think in PPR, I lean towards Brian Thomas Jr. The Pats have a good pieces in the secondary, but overall their defense is not good. Evan Ingram's back too, kind of muddies the target shares up a tiny bit for the Jags. But yeah, I think I go for the ceiling with Brian Thomas Jr. over Javonte Williams tonight. Super tough call for sure. The Saints defense is startable. They're not an amazing start. They're startable. I prefer the Broncos defense, Bills defense, Bengals defense over the Saints defense for sure. JSN or Sutton? This is a good one too. A lot of Sutton Javonte questions tonight, as expected. Again, if I were just to run through it at a very high level, Kamara's a must start. Broncos defense is borderline must start unless you have the Bills or the Bengals. Javonte is a good start, not a must start. Sutton is an okay start, not a good start, not a must start. Bub Means is a desperation start. Devon Vele, desperation start. Juwan Johnson, desperation start. Would I start Juwan Johnson over Zach Ertz? Yep. Would I start Juwan Johnson over Pat Frymuth? Yes, I would. Would I start Juwan Johnson over Mark Andrews? I don't know if I have that one in me. I really don't. I think there's a real argument to do that, though. I do. All right, Jackson Smith and Jigba. But those are the types of guys I'm starting Juwan Johnson over. I'm not starting him over, Tucker Kraft. Absolutely not. Jackson Smith and Jigba, yeah, over Sutton. That game could be really high scoring between the Falcons and the Seahawks. The Seahawks lead the NFL in pass attempts by a lot. That game's projected over 50 points. This game has an over-under of 37. All right, we got a super flex question here. I was hoping we get a Spencer Rattler question here so I could say not to start Rattler. It's very rare that we're telling people to bench quarterbacks over other positions in a super flex league. I think that might be the case in this one, though. Spencer Rattler, man, just projects better here than Worthy in a PPR league. I think you might have to trot out Spencer Rattler just because of the position that he plays in a super flex league, if that's the only option you have. Kyler, trade candidate? Yep, definitely Kyler's a trade candidate. Kyler Murray has a really rough schedule coming up. Like, he's not a must-start quarterback in these next 4 games. He plays the top 4 defenses versus quarterbacks in his next 4 games. Literally the top 4 in his next 4. I've never seen a stretch like this for anyone in any position. I mean, it's really rare you see something like this. He gets the number 4, number 2, number 3, and then number 1 defense versus quarterbacks this season over his next 4 games. And he's been super inconsistent. I don't think Kyler's a guy that you need to hold on to on your fantasy rosters. If you could trade him, I definitely think that's good. Juwan Johnson or Hunter Henry? Yeah, I'm going Juwan Johnson over Hunter Henry. I think that if we compare these guys quick, Henry and him are close. And Henry's obviously had some big games this season. He had 13 points last week, scored a touchdown with Drake May. He gets a good matchup versus the Jags this week. He had a 16% target share. So I can see the argument for him. I mean, he was under 6 points the 3 games before that. Juwan Johnson's had back-to-back games over 7 points with 7.5 points without a touchdown. Again, this is a good matchup for him versus the Broncos. They've allowed at least 5 total receptions, 2 tight ends in 5 straight games. This is a good situation for Juwan Johnson, who's coming off back-to-back games over 70%, 75% snap share. He might lead this team in receiving tonight. Like, that is definitely within the cards. That's part of the reason I'd like the Juwan Johnson over 2.5 receptions line tonight. It's one of the free player props, along with Estime over 16.5 rushing yards. Yes, Tyreek Hill is a trade target for sure. All the Dolphins are, because a lot of people just don't really realize that there's a good chance Tua comes back very soon. And if people don't realize that, then you're going to get a good value for it. I'm starting Bub Means with no target comp over Ayuk. Oh, God. Definitely not advised. This is not advised. Do not try at home. Starting Bub Means over Brandon Ayuka, the bazooka. And sure, which of these guys did better last week in fantasy? It was Bub Means. I think Bub Means had more fantasy points last week. 15.5 for Bub Means versus the Bucs. 5 catches, 45 yards, and a TD. Played over 70% of snaps. Same thing we should see tonight. Over 20% target share. Potential, we see that tonight. He did, again, I think lead all rookie wide receivers heading in this year's draft class in yards per reception with 17.6, 92nd percentile size adjusted speed score for Bub Means. He has big playability. He's still not playing as much as Brandon Ayuk. He's still way worse than Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk's been under 10 points in all but 1 game. Tough matchup versus the Chiefs. But yeah, I mean, this isn't close. You kind of have to start Ayuk unless you really want something to root for tonight. By the way, this is one of those Thursday night games. If you are wagering a single dollar on this game, we'd probably be friends. This is that type of game. There's a certain type of person out there willing to risk on this game, and if you are one of those people, we probably would be friends. All right, great work. Thanks, love the app. I appreciate that. Yeah, guys, the best way you could possibly support me is downloading the WalterPicks app. It's a free app in the iOS and Android app store. Link is in the TikTok bio. Link is in the YouTube description. best way you could possibly help me out, use code SAM when you sign up too. You'll get a free 7-day trial to all the premium features. There's tons of free features as well. If you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live. You can see some of those free features on the YouTube live in action. All right, drop worthy to add Pickens looking towards playoffs. Yeah, yep. I definitely think this makes sense. I definitely just regardless of schedule, I think Pickens is pretty clearly better than Worthy for fantasy. And I think Pickens also has a couple good matchups. Yeah, he does. I already drafted the outline for the video that I'm going to be posting in the next week or so, maybe tomorrow if I have time, but definitely within the next week, of everyone to trade for with the best playoff schedules. And George Pickens is on that list. George Pickens is clearly the top receiver on his own team, and he gets the Eagles, then Ravens to start the fantasy playoffs. Like, yep, definitely want that over Xavier Worthy. And I think the whole Chiefs team is a little bit at risk to potentially be rested at some point in the fantasy playoffs. Like week 17, they're undefeated right now. If they lock up the 1 seed, they're not going to be pushing any of their starters to the limit down the stretch as they go for back-to-back Super Bowls. So I'm definitely a little cautious about the whole offense a little bit for fantasy, especially Kelsey, who's over 35 years old. I think there's a lot of risk there with him too. I think I would be trying to trade him at the trade deadline, but yeah, I definitely think Pickens over Worthy. Rest of the season makes sense. All right, let's see if there's any other Thursday night starts. Yeah, we're playing Christian Kirk over Bub Means. Mostert versus Bub Means. Absolutely Bub Means. Yeah, this is one of the few ones. I think this probably is Bub Means. I don't know. Like, I could see Mostert having a good ceiling in this game. It does seem like Achan's going to play, though. Jalen Wright played last week, too. Mostert was back, though, and he actually was pretty effective in his last game coming up the bye. He should be fully healthy now. He had 4.2 yards per carry. He had 80 total yards, 2 catches, 11 points. Gets a good matchup versus the Colts. And his whole backfield has a good stretch of matchups here. But if Achan plays, I mean, he's just not going to project great. I think it's Bub Means. I think it is Bub Means over Raheem Mostert in a PPR league. Bub Means or Vele? Yeah, this is the question I was hoping we would see. Bub Means versus Devon Vele. This is the true question of the night. So let's wrap on this question here. Devon Vele versus Bub Means. So Bub Means, again, just to recap, if you guys have no idea who these guys are, I don't blame you. Bub Means, the 5th round rookie draft pick out of Pittsburgh. He was picked at the end of the 5th round. I mean, really technically it was the 6th round. He was the 35th pick in the 5th round. It was the 5th round compensatory pick for the Saints. He is fast. He is a deep threat. 92nd percentile size adjusted speed score, 17.6 yards per reception in college. That also ranks near the 99th percentile in terms of yards per reception in college. He was not a very good producer in college, was not the best receiver on his own team in college. Last week, he did have 15 fantasy points, though. He did have 15 points last week. He had 5 catches, 45 yards, and a TD, 21% target share on 8 targets from fellow rookie Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler really struggled in the second half. He was under 5 yards per attempt when passing inside the pocket once the Bucs were able to keep him inside the pocket, which the Broncos probably will be able to do tonight. And then you got Devon Vele on the other side here. Devon Vele has only played in 2 games this season. He is a near 27-year-old rookie. Again, I do not know how that is possible. I really don't understand the college path you take to be a near 27-year-old rookie. But Devon Vele, he was picked even later than Bub Means. He was picked in the middle of the 7th round, almost went undrafted. He also has pretty good size adjusted speed, 86th percentile size adjusted speed. He also was a decent deep threat in college, not to the level of Bub Means, but 13.8 yards per reception in college. He was played in Utah again. He played 5 years in college at Utah. Didn't do anything really for the last couple of years. Not very good in college. He has, interestingly though, been over an 18% target share in both the games we've seen him play. And he's coming off a season high, career high 61% snap percentage. So I think I lean Bub Means. He did do better last week. I won't be shocked either way here, but yeah, I think it's Bub Means over Vele if I had to choose. Trade J-Mo and Kirk for Neighbors. Yes. Do this trade. Malik Neighbors is a top 5 wide receiver rest of the season. None of these other guys are anywhere near the top 5. Malik Neighbors is a league winner. Also, Neighbors is going to be on that video I'm going to make about the fantasy football playoff schedule. This is the time of the year where I start to lock in on the fantasy football playoff schedules. I will have a video coming out about this. Look at the schedule for Malik Neighbors, guys. He gets the Ravens, who rank bottom 3 versus receivers this season, then a potential shootout against the Falcons, who are okay matchup, not amazing, and then he gets the Colts. He's got 2 bottom 5 secondaries in the fantasy football playoffs. He's got a great schedule, before the playoffs too, to help you make the playoffs. There's very few players I want more than Malik Neighbors on my fantasy team. What's going on, Sam? How are we feeling? We're feeling great. We got a banger of a Thursday night football game on our TV screens in just a couple of hours. Question for you: need a flex? Javonte Williams, Pop Douglas, Eckler, Sermon, Chase. Yeah, it's Javonte. It's Javonte against a team that just allowed over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns to Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving. I think it is that simple tonight. We haven't seen Javonte score a touchdown yet this season. I think he probably does tonight. I also think Estime could get some run, but I still think Javonte's a start in that situation, and he's a good start in a lot of situations. I'm playing Mooney over Bub Means, seeing that one in the TikTok Club. I'm playing Juwan Johnson over Ertz. I'm playing Juwan Johnson over Freiermuth too. I like the Juwan Johnson over 2.5 receptions. Estimate over 16.5 rushing yards. Estimate scores first touchdown. Those are the free player props of the live stream. We are 14-9 on the free player props now this season, doing pretty well for sure. So I do not think Jacoby Myers plays this week. So every single Jacoby Myers starts it tonight. I'm not starting Jacoby Myers. So yeah, I'm playing Bub Means and Devon Bailey over Myers because he hasn't practiced yet. So I just don't think you can bank on Thursday nights on guys that haven't practiced yet. And generally speaking, that's going to end up being true most of the time. Starts it here. Running back in a flex PPR. Mooney, Brian Thomas Jr., Javonte, Hunt. Yeah, so the running back's Javonte. I think Javonte over Hunt. It's a close call for sure, but just based on how the running backs did last week versus the Saints defense, Bucky Irving and again, Sean Tucker combining over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. You got to go Javonte. And then Mooney versus Brian Thomas Jr. is close. Sunday morning question, obviously there. I think I probably would play both these guys in PPR over Hunt. I think it's Mooney. I think it's Mooney over Brian Thomas Jr., but it's definitely close. Douglas over Sutton. I'm going Douglas over Sutton. Again, a final recap here. Kamara's a must start. Broncos defense is pretty much a must start unless you have the Bills or the Bengals. Javonte is a good start, not a must start. Sutton is an okay start, not a good start. Bub Means is a desperation start. Devon Bailey, desperation start. Juwan Johnson, desperation start. Let me just run through the tight ends I'd play Juwan Johnson over, because again, there are some spots I would start Juwan Johnson. I'm playing Juwan Johnson over Zach Ertz, over Pat Freiermuth, over Hunter Henry, over Grant Calcaterra, over Kobe Parkinson. Seen all those questions tonight. I'm going Juwan there. The Broncos have allowed at least 5 catches to tight ends in 5 straight games. Alvin, this was a league-winning trade. Love to see that you just executed that one. If Mason doesn't play, Shakir or Mostert, oh God, Shakir is just barely startable at this point. Mostert too. This is going to be a tough Sunday morning question to think through as well. But hopefully Mason plays. It does seem like he's going to play. But yeah, I probably lean Shakir in PPR. I'm desperate to get Ayuk off my team. Yeah, I mean, we'll see if the Bub Means over Ayuk decision bodes well for you tonight. Javonte or Sutton? Yeah, I'm going Javonte over Sutton. I think I'd go Javonte over Douglas too. That one's definitely pretty close. Which side would you pick? Team A gets Achane and Smitty. Team B gets Montgomery and Swift. I think the answer here is the Achane side. It's definitely a fair trade. Look at Montgomery's playoff schedule. Really good, actually. I thought this was worse than it is. And then Achane has a good playoff schedule as well. I think Achane's playoff schedule is where Achane has a good schedule coming up. Smitty has a really good schedule, though. Let's just peek at Swift, too. And this could be fair, too, depending on what each team needs. Swift on bye this week. Let's just peek ahead at his schedule. I'm pretty sure that one's also not great. Yeah, it's really, really bad for Swift. I think I like the Devontae Smith side. I think Devontae Smith might actually be the best player in that trade. That's my time, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Time's the most valuable thing we have. Thanks for spending some time with me tonight to run through my final thoughts on the game really quick before we get to the subscriber-only comments on the TikTok Live. I think the Broncos have a chance to blow out the Saints in this game, kind of like what we saw for the Saints last week. Rattler really struggled inside the pocket last week. I like the Estime rushing prop, Juwan Johnson reception, and I think we might see Estime score his first career touchdown. Just think of Jordan Howard when you see Estime tonight and tell me that is not what Estime is like. Guys, have a great night. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you Sunday morning, and I got a couple videos coming on the TikTok, YouTube, Instagram feeds before then as well, so keep an eye out for those. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. Have a good night, and good luck, everybody.